Welcome to the EVready podcast, featuring industry leaders and their perspectives on electrification, hosted by EVready Energy. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the EVready podcast. This is Chris Nyan of EVready Energy, and today's a really exciting podcast, and I have on with us our Chief Product Officer, Kevin Doyle, and our Chief Technology Officer, Brian Burke. Guys, thanks for joining.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Awesome. So this is an exciting one. We've been hard at work over the last 6 months or so developing what we would think is a pretty unique solution in the energy management, more specifically in the EV charging industry. And that's the goal of the podcast today is to talk about the making of what we call Guardian. And so Brian and Kevin have been the minds behind that. And we're going to learn a little bit about what it took, the challenges, the problem it solves, how it helps customers, all of those things. And so I'm going to kick it off. Kevin, first question is for you. Can you talk a little bit about what are the problems that we were trying to identify and solve in the industry?
Sure. So there were three main problems that we set out to solve with this software. So number one, there's a lot of customers that have put in electric vehicle charging infrastructure, and then they get hit with really high electricity bills, especially when you take into account things like demand charges, where utilities are charging you for a peak in your electricity usage. And so reducing those peaks is really the number one thing we can do to help customers lower their utility bills. The next problem we set out to solve was integration of both level 2 AC charging, high power DC fast charging, and building load to aggregate all three of those things together and manage them as a group. And I think that that's really where you get the biggest impact on lowering your electricity bills is when you can bring those all together. And then the third problem we set out to solve was aggregating EV chargers from different charging providers where they're on completely separate cloud platforms that don't communicate with each other, especially for energy management.
And the only comment I want to make for folks that don't understand like how you're charged on your electric bill, here's the key point. At home, you're charged for how much electricity you use. On commercial electric bills, you're charged for how much electricity you use. But the primary challenge is you're charged for how much power you use. And EV charging uses as much power as large Walmart supercenters, multiple of them at one time. And so it makes power the biggest problem tied to your costs, not how much electricity you use. And that's what we're looking to help customers prevent paying excessive fees in their electric bill because of power. So with that being said, Brian, the next question is for you. What's Guardian and why is it unique to charging station owners?
Yeah, so as Kevin hinted at there, Guardian pulls together information on the chargers and power meters at the customer site. There's no other solution out there today that pulls together chargers from different networks and meter data. So that's one of the most unique things in Guardian. So we have quite a few APIs continuously running, collecting large amounts of data. And we have the algorithms that run in real time to manage the chargers, no matter what network they're on, whether they're L2, L3.
And Kevin, your background is so interesting related to, I think, this topic. You've seen it. You came from the industry, from charging software companies. You understand how those were developed, how standards were developed in the industry, and maybe just talk a little bit about why this solution was so unique to you, given that you came from the charging industry.
Yeah, so many of the charging station operators today do have some energy management capabilities built into their software platforms, but they have little to no interest in controlling chargers that are connected to a different cloud. And so you may be able to get a solution from your provider, but if you're a site where you have charging stations from multiple providers, then there's really not a solution out there that does that. And so that was something that was very interesting to me, was being able to set up our own separate connections to each of the different cloud providers, each of the different charging providers, and then bringing them all together in one place. Also, having a flexible software platform allows us to not only connect into the devices, but into additional data feeds. So though we are controlling all of the power, we're also pulling in things like electricity rates. And so when we have all of the data about how much your utility is going to charge you, then we can check how well we did. So we can see how well did we reduce the power at that site and what does that translate into in terms of dollars and cents that the customer is going to experience on their utility bill.
So, Brian, can you talk a little bit about how our combined solution reads live building load?
Yep. So we have a partner uh, company that we work with that has power meters that are installed at the customer site. And these are physical devices that have wires that wrap around the power lines coming into the building and are reading the both the power and the energy real time. There's an integration back to our system. We get data roughly every minute of these metrics. We also get historic data. We can collect data in 15-minute intervals. These are the same intervals that are used by the power company to compute the power bill for the building.
Awesome. And Kevin, can you talk about even why sometimes the node, this measuring device that measures the building, can be even more powerful than smart meter data from electric utilities?
Yeah. So when you integrate, so the smart meter that is on site that the utility installs, those meters connect into the utility backend systems. And those they obviously, since the utility has a huge number of those meters across all of their customer sites, they're very conservative with how much data they send to the utility cloud. And then there's all kinds of security protocols over how that information gets stored within the utility and what access external companies would have to get that data. So what you can get from the utilities is often only something like 15-minute data. Whereas what we're doing is, as Brian mentioned, we're getting data every minute from our meter. So we know within a minute if a new load has been, if a car has plugged in and now it's charging at 300 kilowatts, we know that within a very short period of time. And then we can adjust the power levels on other chargers to accommodate the new load. We're also getting data from all the charging networks at about that frequency. So going through the utility smart meter, though it sounds like a easy win, actually dealing with the utility, all the bureaucracy of the power companies, and all of the security controls and just conservative practices that they have on how often they share that data, this solution gives us really fine grained control, which is what you need if you're going to try to keep your power under a budget and do that in a responsive way.
I'll add something to that. Another thing using our own nodes gives us is the flexibility to install multiple nodes at different panels. So with the smart meter, you're going to get one. We can actually have a couple, and we're flexible with how we aggregate that data.
To be clear for customers, the goal of this product is to primarily lower your energy bills, sometimes in a pretty dramatic way. What Kevin was talking about data coming faster than 15 minutes, the difference between saving money and not saving money is that time period. And that's so valuable tied to our node. It allows us to be able to actually save you money tied to power. Key differentiation. So the next question for Brian is, Brian, can you just talk about exactly how we control chargers based on node data tied to building load to reduce the electric bill?
Yeah. So each time the algorithm runs its real time algorithm, it's looking at the sum of the power being consumed by each individual charger, as well as the rest of the load that's measured by the meter, which is the building load. So in a typical customer site, building load might include something like power tools or an air conditioner. When one of those comes on, we can see that additional load that didn't come from the chargers and react to that and lower the power of the chargers to keep that demand charge down. So that's absolutely unique capability. No one else has that ability.
And Kevin, can you talk a little bit about charge management system hygiene?
Sure. So, because we have this real time connectivity into every charger in order to do the power management application, we also know the status of every charger within every minute. So if a charger goes down, loses connection, or power goes out, or a component fails, that gets bubbled up within our algorithm that's managing the power, but also within our system that's monitoring the health of every charger. And being able to do that across multiple networks is really powerful because today, if a customer actually has charging stations from multiple providers, they have to go through multiple support channels, multiple software applications, multiple phone numbers to call in for a problem. With this solution, you pretty much create a one-stop shop for a customer to solve all their problems across any piece of hardware that's been installed. So yeah.
I I have the same question, but now I want to talk about it from a power management perspective. So you guys have been integrating different charging CMS systems into the software so that they can communicate together. But what we've learned is that not all software systems can aggregate both level 2 and level 3 chargers together. Can you talk about this addition, this improvement that we've added to CMS systems where they can now have more functionality in and of themselves with our solution added on?
Yeah, so some networks can do that and some can't. And there's various limitations because chargers from different hardware providers may have different software capabilities. And so even though those chargers might be connected to the same backend cloud system, they may have different capabilities, different ways of connecting into the cloud. And so because of, the tech debt that those CMS providers have, sometimes they just aren't able to aggregate power across different types of hardware that have different connectivity means. We kind of sit at a layer above that. And so we can view all chargers in a sort of equal way. And so as long as we have a connection into them and we can send those commands all the way down, we can aggregate across groups within a provider or groups that span multiple providers.
One thing I would add to that without getting too much into the details is we do take account and optimize for the different behaviors of L2 charging with typically longer sessions versus L3 with shorter sessions. So we try to optimize the experience overall between those two.
Now, what we've done, Guardian integrates thousands of different electric utility rates across the United States so that we can measure our performance to some type of a cost savings. Brian, can you talk a little bit about that integration and that feature that we have within the software?
Yeah. So once again, this is another API we have. We have lots and lots of APIs in this product. API with a third-party partner of ours that provides this data, and it's available, as Chris said, for every state, every power company in the country. Sometimes we run into rate schedules that they haven't loaded in yet, so it takes a day or two for them to load that in, and then they keep it updated. And these rate schedules are very complex beasts. There's all sorts of additional charges, fees. We've noticed in particular that there are always notes provided. Some of those notes can indicate fees of hundreds or even thousands of dollars. So we're working on some new features that will parse through that data, essentially using AI, take the unstructured data, make it structured, and use it for the calculations for our customers.
Kevin, so the next thing I wanted to talk about is this isn't just about saving money. This is about the new world of electric utilities and how there's new revenue stream opportunities that are coming about as the grid gets more complex. And that's the strength of Guardian, is the ability to help save money, but also create new revenue streams. Can you talk a little bit about what demand response is and how Guardian can help customers manage energy load to create new revenue streams that they don't have today?
Sure. So demand response programs have been around for a while with several utilities. And the challenge that they face is that during peak times when electricity usage is really high, typically in the summertime when a lot of buildings throughout a city are using a lot of air conditioning, if they can find customers that are able to reduce power during those peak times, there's money that will be paid out by the utility to those customers. So being able to participate in those programs can have big financial incentives. One of the challenges there, though, is that you need to have a lot of power usage in order to bid in that power to the program. So if you have a site where you're constantly charging lots of cars, and it doesn't matter if, let's say, the cars that we're going to sit there charging for 4 hours are instead going to take 5 hours because maybe they're charging just for a long time. And then you can reduce the power for a period of time during one of those peaks, shove the charging out further into the day, and then at a higher rate once the event is over. And so by doing that, you can actually bring in more revenue for these customers. So not only are we saving them money on avoiding the peaks, but we're saving money by shifting load to different times of day.
So this is something that's commonly done within HVAC today. It's even easier with EV charging, but it's critical to have the capabilities of, in an automated way, being able to control loads at certain times with the key of not impacting business operations, and that's what Guardian will provide. So the next question, Brian, I wanted to ask about is one of my favorite things about the software is the responsiveness of the software itself, how easy it's used compared to be used compared to traditional CMS providers. Can you talk a little bit about the speed of using the software as a user?
Yeah. So we have the advantage of building a new platform today using essentially all of the best modern techniques for software. So for those software techies out there, it's a single page application with API backend. We really optimize both for performance, cost. Different types of data are stored in different locations, whether it's data that we need quick access to versus data that's going to grow without bounds. And, when you stick that kind of data in a transactional database, the whole thing slows down. So we store that in a object store. So there's a lot of techniques that we've applied, and as we develop, we're always looking at performance each step of the way. And so far, it's looking pretty darn good.
Yeah, I'm loving using it. And Kevin, maybe you could start a quick conversation about what the biggest challenges were in developing the solution. I think about different energy management protocols, PI functionality challenges, and charger connectivity. Can you talk a little bit about some of the challenges you guys have faced?
Sure. So there are a few protocols out there that are kind of standards for the EV charging industry. But when it comes to energy management, there haven't been a lot of great standards that have emerged yet. There's kind of bits and pieces that have been thrown into some of the protocols. And so each of the charging providers that we've encountered have a little bit different capabilities and different like APIs completely. So we've had to do custom implementation for each of those. But once you get down to it, you can basically normalize everything that they provide and create a common language internally that we can use to run our algorithms against. So that was one of the challenges, is the disparity between the different APIs from these providers. I think another challenge was when you build software like this, and all the years I've spent in the EV charging industry, there's the most important thing is actually having real hardware and plugging in real vehicles. Even doing simulations of power management on fixed like power devices is really, you don't get all of the weird behaviors that come out of actually plugging in a real car. So we've built a lab where we can plug in chargers from multiple providers, and then we can plug in multiple vehicles into those chargers and manage them. We also have a power meter in the lab that we can use to look at the power for the entire building and manage the chargers against that. Each vehicle manufacturer has different behaviors on how the vehicle interacts with the charging stations. And so having multiple vehicle types from different vendors and multiple from different OEMs and multiple chargers from different vendors really lets us see how it works in the real world. So there is a huge hardware component to this that we haven't really, that doesn't come out of this. It is great software that we've built, but the key like of mixing that with the real world hardware is super important to be able to get software that really works in the real world. We've also reached out to some of the charging providers, and they've given us access to control power on their high power chargers, on the DC fast chargers. We don't have the ability to put a DC fast charger in our lab today. So we've partnered with the networks to give us access and test out our algorithms on high power charging as well.
I'll add a couple things on some of the challenges with these APIs and working with the charger cloud providers. So on the APIs, this makes it both challenging and fun. Again, for the techies, we have SOAP, we have REST, we have Event Bus using AWS SQS that we have to respond to. We have webhooks. So in my career, I've worked with many different types of APIs. We have them all. So that's both challenging and fun. And one of the challenges we have, as Kevin was mentioning, the real world of data and hardware, happens that you can't see. Our unique ability to match the power meter data from the nodes that we have installed with the data we receive from the charging networks has allowed us to identify issues that not even the customer nor the charger cloud could identify. We can see that something turned on, something's consuming power that really looks like, the structure of it looks like a charger, and we're able to identify which charger is not transmitting the data through. And this problem has occurred with all of the charger clouds we've worked with. So being able to solve that with the meter data has been an interesting challenge and fun to work through.
If I was a customer, what I would say is think about us like this. There are so many companies out there trying to build holistic, vertically stacked solutions where they can really sink their teeth in you. We're Google Translate for energy management. And so you've made investments already. You're going to make new investments in the future. What we're trying to do is take those investments together and translate those into a protocol where you can control everything under one pane of glass. So next question for Brian is, if you had to define what you think the best business customer use cases for our software, who would it be and why?
Yeah, so it would definitely be a customer that has high electric bills due to demand charges. The ability to manage the chargers to keep those demand charges down provides just ridiculously significant savings. As we've seen with some of our customers today, especially with the DC chargers, they might not have that many sessions of DC chargers a month, these level 3 chargers, but when one of them comes in and hits, or 2 or 3 of them come in and hit, it's like a 30-minute time period in a month that is contributing $1,000, $2,000 to their bill. So that's a pretty easy, good use case. And we're able to reduce the bill without making it a terrible experience for the car owner as well. They're still getting good service.
Anything to add there?
Well, yeah, I mean, there are often applications in the market that inconvenience drivers. And so I think that always keeping that in mind, that the user experience, the customer experience of making sure cars get charged is super critical. And so being aware when, chargers are being reduced too far down is also an important aspect of the overall experience.
Yeah. So for a customer, like layman's terms, if you have multiple clouds at your location, if you have a cloud that doesn't have the capabilities to perform aggregation, if you don't have the capabilities to perform aggregation on some type of a business meter, if your load fluctuations are extremely heavy, or if you're just a customer who your business is never going to be focused on, you're not going to hire someone full time to focus on energy, but you want to make sure that all your energy costs are optimized for a really good price and circumstance, Guardian's for you. All right, guys. Next question is related to the roadmap, and I think the answer is just around, like, at the end of the day, it's like, this is the incredibly unique for charging eventually. And you probably want to leave demand response out of it because we talked about like demand response exists, but you probably just want to say, hey, this is what the end result will look like a full-on energy management system, and just make people feel like, there's a good roadmap. So let me ask the question. I'm going to start with you, Brian. If you could answer afterwards, talk a little bit about like the way that we got into the market was we said, we're going to solve what's actually the biggest problem tied to energy management for anyone with charging stations, and focused on that as an add-on. But eventually this will turn into a larger energy management system. So what does that look like in 2026?
Yeah, just adding on to that, more APIs, more data. We always want more data from any sources we can get it. We integrate with a number of charger clouds now. There's more that we'll integrate with, more device data that's consuming power at the sites, and something that won't be as visible to customers, but something I'm pretty excited about that we're working through is a much more flexible, dynamic setup of the site. So with all these different pieces at the site, we want to be super agnostic, draw the picture of what the site looks like, where chargers are, where panels are, where meters are, and be able to work with really any setup.
So just as a closing note for customers, I want to reemphasize this. Maybe you haven't made big investments yet. Maybe you've already made the majority of your big investments. and you just have a few more big investments to be made in the future, we are Android. We are Google Translate for energy management. So if you have something from the past that needs to be connected to the future, we're your company to go to with Guardian to integrate all those things together. So Kevin, Brian, thank you guys so much for the effort, the time, and looking forward to working with customers out there in the future to help your individual business use case and situation with Guardian, EVready's energy management system.